Alright, welcome back to week 4 part A. So this is the last video for week 4 part A. Really quick review. Remember we talked about for loops earlier in the quarter. So loop is a way to repeat code. So it's a repetition structure that causes a statement or a block of statements to run repeatedly. That is a loop. So we've already talked about for loops, and we specifically talked about how for loops are count-controlled loops, right? You know in advance specifically how many times that for loop is going to run based on, whatever sequence you give it. Now we're going to talk about another type of loop today. The loops that we're talking about today are called while loops. So the way while loops work is rather than repeating code some fixed number of times, they're going to repeat code until some event happens. So because of that, while loops are considered event-controlled loops. So again, they repeat code until something happens. So slightly different than repeating code so many numbers of times. So in general, this is what a while loop looks like. You have the word while. This is another one of those Python keywords. And then some condition. So this condition is something that evaluates to a bool type, either true or false, a colon, and then the statements that you want to run are indented underneath that colon. And the way it works is the loop will continue running all of those statements, so it'll continue running the code inside of it as long as that condition is true. So then if at the end of running all of the statements that are indented in the while loop, if at the very end of those statements, if the condition is false, those statements don't run again, and it'll just go on to the next set of code, or the program will be finished depending on whether or not there's more code. Again, if it's at the end of the running the statements and the condition is true, then it will run the same statements again. Alright, so here's an example. So we have an assignment statement, num equals 4. Let's go ahead and draw our little variable box drawing diagram just to sort of keep track of what's going on here. So again, we have num equals 4. That's an assignment statement, right? For variable num. And it gets 4. And then we hit this condition, right? We hit this while loop. And the condition is while num is less than 9. So again, the way it works is any statements that are indented under the while loop, specifically in this example, it'll be these 2 lines of code. Any statements that are indented underneath the while, those are going to keep running until this condition is false. So right now, num is 4, which means this is true, which means we are going to go ahead and run both of these lines of code. Alright, so first line of code, num equals num plus 2. Do the right hand side first. Num is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. So we put 6 into num. So we'll go ahead and update this to now have 6 instead of 4 like we had before. Alright, then next line of code, print num. That's where the 6 comes from. Once you are done running all of these indented statements, you go back to the top of this loop right here, and you check this condition again. So right now, we're checking to see if num is less than 9. Num right now is 6, so this is true, which means we're going to go ahead and run these 2 lines of code again. So again, assignment statement, do the right-hand side first. Num right now is 6. 6 plus 2 is 8, so we're going to put 8 into the variable num. So let's go ahead and do that now. There's our 8, perfect. And then we print num. That's where this 8 is coming from. Again, now we go back to the top of the loop. We go back here, check and see if this condition is true. Is num less than 9? Yes, it is, which means we're going to do both of these statements again. So, assignment statement, right-hand side first, num plus 2. 8 plus 2 is going to give us 10, so we're going to update num to now have 10 in it. Cool. and then we do this print. That's where this 10 comes from. We're done with all the code that is inside the while loop, so we go back to the top of the while loop. We check this condition. Right now, num is 10, which means this condition is false, which means we do not run these lines of code. Since there's no other code here after it, that means we're done. So that's this example here. So again, it's going to run through the code, and it will continue running all of the code inside that while loop until that condition is false. Alright, here's another example. Go ahead and try this one on your own. So go ahead and pause this video, try it on your own, and then come back when you are ready to talk about it. Alright, so I know this one was a little bit different because it involves strings instead of numbers. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So hopefully you got this. If not, don't worry, we'll work through it together. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and make a new file here. So I have new stuff to draw. Alright, cool. So first line of code, assignment statement, right? Characters equals ABC. I'm not going to write out the whole word characters just because it's a little bit long, but chars is characters. Just keep that in mind. So in here we have this string ABC. Perfect. And then this second line right here is an assignment statement. So we have another variable num, and it has 0. There we go. Cool. So we're set up. Now we hit this while loop. So again, the rules with the while loop, you do the lines of code that are within the while loop, which is these two lines here, right? Not this print because it's not indented. Only these two lines are indented. So you continue running these two lines of code until this is no longer true. So we hit the while loop. First thing we have to do, check and see if this condition is true. Alright, so while the length of characters is less than 6, do this stuff. Alright, well, let's look at characters. Right now, characters has 3 characters in it, right? So the length of characters right now is 3, which is less than 6. So this is true, which means we're going to go ahead and run both of these lines of code. Alright, so then we hit this line of code. This is an assignment statement. We have to do the right-hand side first. So right-hand side says take this string that's in characters, ABC, and then do string concatenation. Remember, this is string concatenation with number, or num, converted into a string. So this is doing a couple different things. So it's taking this string, ABC, and then it's concatenating it with num, which is 0, converted to a string. So this is going to create the string A, B, C, 0. Alright, so now we're going to put this ABC 0 into that variable character. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is now updated to this. Cool. That was this line of code right here. Then we hit this line of code, which says, hey, right-hand side, take num, which is 0, add 3, so 0 plus 3, that's going to be 3, put 3 into num. So we'll go back here, num now gets the value 3. Perfect. Okay, so that's the code that's part of the while loop, right? There's no other code part of the while loop because there's nothing else indented. So that means we go back to the top of the while loop and we check this condition again. Alright, so we're checking to see if the length of this string is less than 6. Well, let's look at the string. The string now has 4 characters. 4 is still less than 6, which means this is true, which means we are going to run both of these lines of code. So let's go ahead and do that. So first line of code, assignment statement, right-hand side first. So again, with this right-hand side one, we're going to take everything that's already in characters, which is ABC 0, right? ABC 0. And then concatenate it with the string that is the result of converting num into a string. So we're basically doing this string concatenation. We are taking ABC0 as a string, and we are concatenating it with 3 as a string. So again, string concatenation, you just sort of smush the strings together, which means this characters plus strnum at this point is going to be ABC0 3 as a string. So let's go ahead and update this to ABC0 3 as a string. Cool, that's this line. Then we go ahead and do this line, another assignment statement, right hand side first. Num right now is 3. 3 plus 3 is 6, so this num is now going to update to 6. So let's do that. Update this to 6. Perfect. Alright, cool. So we did this iteration of the loop. Now we go back to the top of the loop, check this condition again. Is length of characters less than 6? It is, right? Length of characters, there's 5 in there right now. 5 characters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Still less than 6, which means we got to do these 2 lines of code again. Alright, so we hit this line of code. Characters right now is ABC03. When we add, concatenate, I should say, because this is a string, when we concatenate this string with this string, that is going to give us ABC036, right? Because right now, num has 6 in it. So that's this line of code right here. Next line of code, num equals num plus 3. First we do the right hand side, num plus 3. Num right now is 6. 6 plus 3, that's going to be 9. So we're going to update num to now have the value 9. Cool. Oops, let's make this black. Cool, so num is now 9. We've done everything in this iteration of the loop, which means we come back to the top, check this condition again. Length of characters right now is 6, right? Because it's ABC036. 6 is not less than 6, so this is now false, which means we are finally done with this while loop, which means now we finally fall through and do the rest of the code. In this case, there's only one more line of code that is after that while loop. That line of code says to print characters, which right now is ABC036. That's this part of the output right here. And also print num, which right now is 9. So that's where this 9 comes from. Alright, one more example. Go ahead and try this one on your own and come back when you are ready to see the results. Alright, so for this one, you should get this. I'm not going to spend the time to walk through this one, but if you do have questions about it, please do let me know. Feel free, if you want to double check, feel free to type it up, run it yourself. You're also welcome to add additional print statements inside of it to sort of see what is going on internally. But again, if you have any questions, please do let me know. Alright, one more example that I want to do. This one, I'm going to go ahead and type this one out with you. So if you want to follow along, go ahead and make a new file. Type up this code, pause this video while you're typing it up, and run your file. Go ahead and see what happens. And I'm gonna do the same as well. So let's open up idle, make a new file. I'm going to go ahead and put this into my new file and run it. Let's go ahead and give it a quick name. While loop example. Cool. And I'm running it. cool. So here's the thing. This is going to run forever. This is what we call an infinite loop. It's called an infinite loop because it will never stop. And as you can see, it's still going. So the reason why it never stops is because this condition right here, while this condition num less than 1, it's never going to be false. The reason why it's never false is because we start with num equal to 0, and every time we go into the while loop, we subtract 1 from num, which means it's going to just keep getting smaller and smaller by 1 each time, and we're checking to see if it's less than 1. It's never going to hit 1. It's never going to get to 1 or be anything greater than 1. So this is going to just keep running. So this is what we call an infinite loop. We call it an infinite loop because it will run infinitely. So pro tip, if you ever write an infinite loop and you want to stop it, while you have the shell open, go ahead and press Control-C on your keyboard, and that will make your program stop. Let's talk a little bit more about this infinite loop and what's going on here. So remember the very beginning of the quarter when we talked about algorithms. One of the 3 characteristics that a good algorithm should be is that it needs to terminate, meaning it needs to stop at some point. So because of that, you should really avoid infinite loops as much as you can. The way you avoid that is you need to have some sort of statement inside of your while loop that eventually will make that condition that it's checking, it should eventually make that condition false. Right? If that condition is always true, you're going to get this infinite loop. Now again, with infinite loops, if you do end up coding one on accident or on purpose, just because, you know, that's what you do on a Saturday night, you can go ahead and stop running your code by pressing Control-C. And this Control-C trick, that is not limited to just infinite loops. You can do that with any program. That is just a way to stop your program from running at any point in time. So again, be a little bit careful when you're writing your while loops. Make sure that at some point that condition that it's checking will be false. Alright, if you have any questions about the content from this video or any of the content from week 4, part A, feel free to let me know, post that discussion forum. Otherwise, I'll see you at the next video.